On the island of Udo in the Finnish Archipelago, Magda is drawing a spiral on a rock. Her mother Maria desperately comes looking for her and reminds her not to wander off. They reunite with Maria's husband Henri and they head to the ferry station. In the grocery store, Sandra comes to say goodbye to her secret boyfriend Sebastian. He wishes she would stay on the island with him, but she has to leave for college. She asks him to come with her, but Sebastian has to stay to take care of his grandmother and he promised her she'd never have to leave. On the pier, Hans arrives on a boat with 2 special boxes. Sandra's father Arno and his employee Carrie meet with him to make a deal, and Arno calls him the island's savior. Nearby, the ferry has also arrived. Anton rushes to check the mailbag since he's supposed to get a parcel from the pharmacy, but there's nothing from him. The ferry crew informs him that since it's off-season, they won't be back for a week. Anton then goes home and searches every corner, but he has no medicine left. Magda throws a tantrum because she doesn't want to leave and has forgotten her dreamcatcher, so the ferry captain has to help her parents calm her down. Henri and Maria put her on the ferry and said goodbye. It's devastating for them to see their daughter leave, but they want her to have a good life on the mainland with Henri's mother. As the ferry then leaves, Sandra runs to the pier, only to realize she's too late. Suddenly an earthquake hits the island. Lights flicker as everyone hears a high-pitched sound that makes their ears hurt. The only one remaining calm is Sebastian's grandmother Mary. After a few seconds, the noise and the shaking are gone, and the locals discover that their phones are dead. Power is gone on the whole island, and Petrina can't start her boat. Later at home, Maria apologizes to Henri for being too busy with her dissertation. Henri says he wants a divorce, which triggers an argument. At the local hotel, Arno makes dinner for Hans, who asks how business is going. Arno admits it's been rough, so Hans tells him he can get him out of debt. All he has to do is keep the ball rolling on the marina project. Suddenly the sky turns dark and all the birds in the area fly away from the island. Fog soon covers the land and rats are so desperate to leave that they jump into the water. On the speakers, the locals can hear a boat called Estonia asking for help. Petrina is shocked because those speakers haven't worked in 20 years and the Estonia sank a long time ago. In the evening, the island council discusses the situation. Many people fainted after the noise, while pets are jumpy and refuse to eat. Since Maria is a biologist, they ask for her opinion, so she theorizes there was a solar storm or an electromagnetic wave from space. However, Tommy thinks it could be a virus. They agree to wait until someone from the mainland comes. Since the lighthouse isn't working, Henri restarts the island's old signal fire. Later Arno asks Pertu if the council discussed his proposal. Pertu tells him that they still haven't voted, but he thinks that a guest marina isn't a good idea. Petrina agrees, saying that nobody wants to turn the island into a tourist trap. At the store, Maria and Henri are getting groceries when suddenly Mary bursts in. She wants to know if Magda is safe, but Maria has nothing to say to her. After Sebastian takes Mary home, Henri scolds Maria for being rude, saying that Mary isn't crazy like she thinks. Maria doesn't regret it and thinks someone must put their foot down. Afterward, Maria and Anton check the water treatment plant, but it's not working. Anton wonders if the military is behind the incident, pointing out that there's no explanation for the speakers. The next morning Anton discovers there isn't a single fish left in the water surrounding the island. Petrina gets her sailboat ready to go looking for help, and Maria gives her a message for Magda with the grandmother's number. Henri tells her that he already did that, and Petrina leaves. At that moment, the island starts shaking again and the painful noise returns. Everyone's ears hurt, but Mary sleeps through the incident. Once it's over, Maria decides to visit the military building. She breaks a window to get inside and tries the radios, but not a single machine works. At the hotel, Hans tells Arno that this crisis is their perfect chance to gain the locals' trust. That night, Sandra tries to sneak out to secretly meet with Sebastian, but Arno and Carrie find her and force her to stay inside. They play cards for a while and eventually Arno goes to bed. Now they're alone, Carrie tells Sandra that he'd like to move to the mainland too. Sandra tells him not to do it for her since their relationship has been over for a while. Meanwhile, Maria hears a noise and notices it's Magda's dreamcatcher. When she looks out the window, she sees Mary standing outside in a weird position with a matching dreamcatcher in her hand. Anton is taking care of the fire when he hears the speakers playing a mayday message again. He rushes to the shore and is shocked to find an unconscious man on the rocks. The name on the jacket confirms this is his brother Paul. Over a week later, the island still has no power and Petrina hasn't returned, so the islanders gather in the church to discuss what to do. Maria thinks they should try to leave, but Arno says they should set up a special committee that can handle emergencies. He also says that his hotel's premises and supplies are open to everyone. Carrie explains that in the Sea Scouts they'd vote on a 3-person committee and thinks Arno should be one of them. Everyone agrees, so Arno accepts the job and suggests Maria be part of the committee too. Before he names a third person, Maria says that Sebastian should be the final member because he's the store owner, and the crowd is happy with that selection. When Henri finally arrives, some people tell him that the medical supplies are in the lighthouse and Petrina had the keys, so Henri agrees to help them get in. Meanwhile, Maria asks Tommy about boats that could leave the island. None of the engines is working, so they need sails. There's an old boat abandoned in a yard that they could use, so Tommy agrees to fix it. When Maria goes home and shares her idea, Henri disapproves and they end up arguing again. Near the military building, Anton finds Hans snooping around. When Hans asks a few questions, Anton refuses to answer them. Afterward, Anton goes home to check on Paul, whom he's been hiding from everyone. Hans meets with Arno, who tells him about the sailboat that is being fixed. Herta joins them and asks why a foreigner is here, so Arno tells him that Hans is an old friend. Getting suspicious, Herta realizes that Hans is part of the Marina plans and swears it'll never happen. Meanwhile, Sebastian tells Sandra that their relationship is getting serious, so he'd like to live on the mainland too. It'll just take him some time before he'll be able to move. Sandra kisses him to celebrate. That night, Arno offers free food and music at the hotel, but almost nobody comes, so his plan to gather more support fails. Around the island, the water strangely shakes for several seconds. In the morning, Maria goes to the pier and discovers that all the boats have disappeared. She then goes to see Arno, who tells her she needs to accept the fact that they can't leave. They start arguing, but they're interrupted by a woman asking for help. Pertu and Tommy are fighting, so Maria and Arno rush to calm them down before things escalate. Since Pertu is drunk, Arno thinks they should confiscate all the alcohol to avoid more incidents. Pertu complains, but Maria agrees and Pertu's wife brings them all their bottles. Then Arno privately tells Maria that Anton probably has a secret bunker of supplies. Maria goes to see Anton, who only says he has enough supplies to survive for now. He also gives her a book on Morse code, saying they could try to use the signal fire to send a message. That night, Anton carries Paul out of his house. In the middle of a field, he moves some wood to reveal a secret hatch that takes them to a bunker. Anton takes Paul downstairs and hears him say that he's glad he found him at the last minute. In the meantime, Maria is practicing Morse code but pauses to go outside to relieve herself. At that moment, she sees Mary making a spiral symbol on the ground with rocks. Maria takes her home and Sebastian explains Mary has been wandering a lot lately. The last time a doctor came, he said she was fine. The wandering started after the incident. Sebastian wonders why Maria chose Mary as Magda's godmother, but now she doesn't want to talk to her, so Maria explains that Mary did something very scary once. Later, Maria goes to the fire signal and uses a big plank to cover and uncover the flames, trying to send a message in Morse code. Meanwhile, Sebastian meets with Sandra in the lighthouse, and this time Carrie sees them. They have no choice but to tell him about their relationship. They discuss the island's situation and Sebastian asks about Anton's past. Carrie shares that when the Estonia sank, the bodies ended up on the shores of the island. The locals gather them in bags, however a body was actually alive and broke out of the bag. That was Anton, who then started to check all the bags. The soldiers had to handcuff him. He spent the night apologizing and saying it was all his fault, but nobody knows what he meant. Rumors say that the Estonia was blown up. Then Sebastian shares some Mary Jane. Sandra opens the window to deal with the smoke and sees some lights in the distance, so she tells Maria to add more wood to the fire. Unfortunately, it isn't enough to be seen and the lights disappear. The next morning, Maria is horrified to find a piece of Petrina's boat on the shore. When she goes home, she finds Henri on the verge of a breakdown and he admits he's losing hope. Maria comforts him and decides not to tell him about Petrina's boat. 3 weeks after the incident, Maria goes around town asking the neighbors if they have food and water. The committee has decided to ask families to ration their supplies to make them last. Outside Tommy's house, Maria sees a kayak. At the hotel, Sandra finally tells Arno that she's dating Sebastian and he takes it well. Then Sandra reveals that she's looked at the hotel finances and knows that if they don't get Hans' deal, the hotel will go bankrupt. Arno assures her he has everything under control. Outside, Tommy's wife Sarah tells Maria that her household is almost out of food and her neighbors are in a similar situation. Then Maria asks Tommy about the kayak. Tommy says it works but they're too far to row anywhere. Henri goes to see Seppo and notices he's having lots of food for dinner. He's brought him some strong medicine from Petrina's office in case the noise happens again since Seppo passed out last time. Then Henri reminds him that the committee has asked people to control their portions, but Seppo thinks the end is near so there's no point in saving. He even invites Henri to dine with him. Meanwhile, Arno is asking people for all their food and making Sebastian keep it in the store. Hours later, Sebastian has a whole inventory ready and has created a ration card system that people can use to request food. Later, Anton asks for some food. Sebastian asks him about the Estonia and wants to know how he survived, but Anton only says luck and leaves. He takes the food to Paul, who asks him to make sure that nobody comes to this island. The next day, Henri finds Maria building a raft. He thinks she'll die if she leaves the island and they end up arguing again. After kicking the raft in frustration, Maria goes to see Mary to discuss Magda, but Mary doesn't want to talk. Maria starts shaking her and wants Mary to tell her anything she knows, reminding her that she almost killed Magda a year ago. The room starts shaking and the noise can be heard, but they stop when Maria pulls away. Sebastian then kicks Maria out. That night, Henri looks out the window and is shocked to see lights in the distance. He tells Maria and they rush outside to shoot a few flares. Anton soon comes running and scolds them because he thinks those lights could be from enemies. The couple doesn't believe in his conspiracy theories and keeps shooting while Paul watches them from afar. Anton immediately takes Paul back to the bunker and reminds him to stay hidden, so Paul says he's come to save him even if he continues to be a coward. When Anton leaves, he locks the bunker. Hours pass but nobody comes to the island. Sebastian checks on Mary, but her bed is empty. He goes looking for her and finds her walking into the ocean. He brings her back into the house, unaware that Carrie has been watching them. The next morning Carrie tells Sandra what he saw, accusing Sebastian of being a bad caretaker. Sebastian punches him and Carrie tackles him in return, but it's easy for Sebastian to overpower him and start beating him up. Sandra has to push him to stop him. Meanwhile Maria notices that her compass isn't working well. Seeing it as a sign, she goes to grab the kayak. Tommy warns her she won't survive the sea, and Maria points out they're going to die on the island anyway. She begs for his help, so Tommy agrees to go with her. They leave together while ignoring Henri's pleas to stay. After a few hours of rowing, the island starts shaking and they hear the painful noise. It's so strong that it makes Tommy and Maria bleed. In the sky, something explodes. When the noise finally stops, Maria is left unconscious. Nearby, a Navy ship is trying to approach the island. However, they watch in despair as the chopper they sent out explodes and crashes into the sea. Sometime later, Maria is found on the island shore. On the Navy ship, the soldiers discuss the situation. They have received the maydays from the island, but there's an electromagnetic field that doesn't let them move. All satellite images are corrupted and they can't see the fire signal anymore. They've found the pieces of Petrina's boat, but not the chopper pilots or the black box. Captain Loxo announces their main mission now is to find a way to the island, but their story for the public is a Navy field exercise. Lieutenant Virta is suspicious and wants to know why Loxo replaced their previous captain in the middle of the mission, but Loxo only tells him not to question authority. At the island church, the locals are discussing the situation. Arno tries to stay positive but Perta snaps and asks him to be realistic. Sebastian points out that the noise and the shaking happen every time someone leaves. They hope Maria will have answers. In the afternoon Maria finally wakes up and tells Henri that she doesn't remember anything. Soon Sarah arrives asking about Tommy, but Maria doesn't know. Sarah starts crying and Henri makes her go home for now. Later Arno also comes with questions. Maria explains that the only thing she remembers is the pain she felt when the noise started. She also confesses that she found parts of Petrina's boat, and Arno thinks she was right to hide it because he wants the locals to have some hope. Meanwhile Anton sees two neighbors fighting over supplies. He goes to see Arno and tells him that soon everyone will be turning against each other, so he thinks they should keep an eye on certain people. At the hotel, Arno notices Carrie's wounds. Carrie has told everyone that he fell but Arno can see he's lying, so Carrie tells him Sebastian attacked him for no reason. Arno is skeptical and tells Carrie not to mess with other people's business. Suddenly Arno hears a noise and goes to investigate, only to find Hans snooping around. Hans wants the maps and blueprints of the military building, but Arno doesn't have access to those. Later Maria goes to apologize to Sarah, who slaps her and calls her selfish. Then Maria goes home and finally shows Henri the piece of Petrina's boat. She tries to apologize, but Henri yells at her and calls her selfish too. A furious Henri packs his things and leaves the house to live in the lighthouse instead. In the bunker, Anton is gathering some things because he wants to teach the locals how to get drinking water from seawater. He wants Paul to help him, but Paul thinks the islanders will lose their minds soon and points out that he and his brother could survive alone in the bunker with their secret supplies. Paul is also worried about Hans and they agree to keep an eye on him. Meanwhile Arno sneaks into Hans' room and finds the mysterious boxes in the closet, however they have locks. When he comes out, Hans sees him in the corridor, so Arno pretends he came to bring him dinner. In the evening, Anton finds Paul breaking the lock on a door in the bunker. He tries to tell him he isn't allowed in there, but Paul opens it anyway. He finds a bunch of tools, boxes, and even a firearm. The next day, Carrie finds a dead bird on the island. In the shop, Sandra finds Sebastian putting bars on the windows so people won't steal food. She tries to tell him how scared she was of him during the fight, but Sebastian is distracted when he sees that Mary is in the water again. This time Maria sees her too. After Sebastian takes Mary away, Maria looks at the water and finds a spiral made of rocks. In the store, Sandra tells Sebastian to apologize and be responsible for his actions. Sebastian thinks it's Carrie's fault for taunting him and wonders if she thinks he isn't good enough for him. Sandra is offended and leaves, so Sebastian cries. After checking on Mary, he decides to go after Sandra and locks the store so his grandmother won't escape again. He finds Sandra and apologizes for his attitude, explaining that when he's cornered he feels like he has to defend himself because he's always treated like an outsider here. Maria walks around the island and finds another rock spiral near a tent. She goes inside and notices the message "Our secret" under a table. Inside a box, she finds Magda's drawings and they have spirals too. In a second box, there are drawings made by Mary as a child that also have spirals. Meanwhile Hans leaves the hotel. Minutes later a lantern is thrown through the store window and soon flames are spreading all over the place. Mary tries to leave but the door is locked, so she runs to hide in another room. The smoke makes her pass out. Soon everyone on the island sees the smoke and rushes to fill buckets with water to try to put out the fire. Both Hans and Paul watch from the shadows. Sebastian runs into the building and drags Mary out, finding her with some burns but at least alive. Once the fire is out, Perta searches the ruins but there's no food left. He thinks choosing a committee was a bad idea, so Carrie tells him that Sebastian beat him up and blames him for the fire. After another checkup, Sandra tells Sebastian that they don't have enough medicine to treat the burns, so they must wait for help. However, Sebastian is losing hope because nobody has come for over a month. Then he searches Mary's room and finds a tin with medicine. He doesn't know what it is, so Sandra promises to study it. Later, Maria goes to her attic to get some clothes and finds a spiral carved in the wood floor. She moves a chest and finds a bunch of drawings. These also have spirals, but they were done by someone called Marnie. She tries to see Mary to ask her about the drawings, but she isn't allowed to get visitors. On the Navy ship, Loxo reads a book about the Udo Triangle. 10 times more shipwrecks and drownings have happened here than in the rest of the archipelago. All those incidents involved reports of malfunctioning compasses. Virta has noticed that the electromagnetic field stops from time to time, so Loxo wants divers to go out as soon as it stops again. Since Henri is lonely in the lighthouse, he invites Sarah to live with him. She thinks it's kinda awkward and turns him down. In the hotel, Arno is worried about the island descending into anarchy. Sandra says they should invite everyone to live in the hotel so they can share responsibilities and food, and Arno agrees. Afterward, Arno visits Anton to ask him for theories since he has knowledge of wars in enemy countries. Paul is spying on them with the gun in hand, so Anton gets nervous and tries to kick Arno out. However, Arno begs for his help and Arno agrees to talk a little. In 1995, a radar station was built after the sinking of the Estonia, but back then the military refused to explain what they were building and why. Anton thinks they must like this island because the water is deep enough to have vessels above and under it. After Arno leaves, Paul scolds Anton for saying too much. At the hotel, Pertu announces he'll teach the locals how to distill water. He sees Sebastian leaving with a big can of water and complains because he thinks it's being wasted on a dying granny. Pertu asks how the fire started, and Sebastian walks away. Meanwhile, Maria goes looking for Henri and discovers he's spending a lot of time with Sarah. In private, she mentions that when they moved to the island, Mary sold her old house to them for a very low price. She thinks it's weird she gave the house to strangers, so Henri reminds her that he lived here as a child. Maria asks him if he knew someone named Marnie and shows him the drawings, but he says he didn't. Then Maria visits Seppo to ask him the same question. He doesn't recognize the name Marnie, but tells her that she could check the census records in Petrina's office. The graveyard also has names on the stones. Maria goes to Petrina's lighthouse office and checks the books until she finds Marnie's name. In 1858, Marnie was sent away because she was found guilty of witchcraft. At the hotel, Arno asks Hans to join the distilling course. Hans doesn't like the idea of having to work, but Arno convinces him that it'll get him people's approval. Then Hans checks Hans' room again, and this time he manages to open one of the boxes. He finds lots of notes that include coordinates and words in Russian, plus a map of the area. On the Navy ship, they notice that the magnetic field is down, so the divers go out on a boat. 2 men dive in and soon find the chopper wreck. The pilot's body is still in the cockpit and his eyes are missing. Suddenly the divers are hit by an unexpected current and their radios and trackers stop working. Both the ship and the island then start shaking, and the noise makes everyone's ears hurt for a few seconds. It also wakes Mary up. In the lighthouse, a bucket of ash has fallen and formed a spiral on the floor. Back on the ship, Virta and Loxo check the recording of the divers' mics, but it's just static. However, the extra mics in their gear picked up some screeching that didn't come from the divers. At that moment, the crew finds a diver in the water and immediately brings him aboard. In the hotel, Sandra asks Sebastian if he wants to stay in her room. However, Sebastian blames her for distracting him with a fight, which made him leave Mary alone. His words hurt Sandra, who goes to cry in the corridor. Carrie sees her and comforts her with a hug, so when Sebastian comes after her, he finds them like that and leaves without a word. The next day, Arno has a mission, but he can't find Sebastian, so he gives it to Carrie instead. He wants him to keep an eye on Hans and report any strange movements. Afterward, Arno goes to the military land and cuts the fence with pliers. He then takes a quick look into the tunnels that supposedly link to bunkers before leaving. On his way back, he visits Anton and asks him if he wants to search those tunnels together, but Anton says there's nothing there. In the bunker, Paul is making a bomb. In the graveyard, Maria uses paper and a crayon to trace the names on the stones until she finds Marnie's. Then she goes to the hotel and sneaks into Mary's room to ask her about the drawings. Mary gets upset when she hears Marnie's name and grabs a picture mixed with the drawings. Maria notices that the woman in the picture looks like Mary, but the date on the other side says 1858. When Hans leaves the hotel, Carrie immediately follows him. When he goes down the bunker, someone hits him from behind to knock him out. A few hours later, all the locals are searching the whole island for Carrie to no avail. Meanwhile, Maria goes to see Seppo to update him on her findings. Marnie was blamed for the same strange incidents that are happening now. Seppo says there are lots of strange things in the mouth, but he refuses to explain what it is because he thinks it's just a myth. He then gives Maria all his medicine, claiming he and his wife don't need it anymore. After Maria leaves, 2 gunshots are heard. Maria takes the medicine to Sandra, who reveals Mary hadn't been on any medication. The stuff Sebastian found was 6 years old and not prescribed for her. She looked the name up and discovered it's used for inducing labor. It's strange because the last person who gave birth on this island was Maria. When she tries to go home, Maria passes out from exhaustion and lack of food. Anton finds her and helps her go to her house. They talk about Magda and Anton remembers that she came a month earlier with Mary acting as a midwife with no experience. Maria then remembers that Mary didn't let her go to the mainland to have the baby. On the Navy ship, Laxo tells Virta that the previous captain was removed because he couldn't handle the pressure. Afterward they receive a report with the little data they managed to scrape from the incident. It seems the electromagnetic field brought down the helicopter too. A recording from the cockpit is played and the pilots mention Gus hitting the chopper from different directions. It then started to malfunction and crashed. The same screaming from the diver's tape can be heard in this recording too. Then they check the list of islanders and notice Anton. He's marked as secret because he's ex-military, but he isn't considered a danger because he went crazy with conspiracy theories. In the hotel, everyone thinks Sebastian is involved in Kara's disappearance. He's offended by their accusations so he bursts out of the building. Meanwhile Sarah and her daughter decide to live in the lighthouse with Henri after all. Moments later Maria comes to ask Henri about the mouth myth. Henri says his grandfather used to tell him the story. It was said that the mouth controlled the weather, the sea, and iron. Henri also tells her about the spiral he saw on the floor. When Maria enters the lighthouse, Sarah says she's forgiven her. Maria spends the rest of the day reading all the documents in Petrina's office. She shows Henri that after Marnie was arrested for witchcraft and taken to the mainland, the island didn't keep any records for a few years, almost as if everyone disappeared. Eventually people came back, but none of the original islanders were there except for Marnie. Henri thinks it was the famine and that all the shipwrecks happened because nobody kept the lighthouse on, but Maria wonders if the mouth is real. Repeating the words weather, sea, and iron gives her an idea. At the hotel, Maria tells Arno that a ship built without iron or metal may be able to sail safely. However, Arno thinks she's talking nonsense and refuses to help her. The next morning, the officers bring a fisherman to Laxo's office. During the first incident, he was sailing near the island and his boat broke down. Luckily the Coast Guard helped him. The man claims he'd been fishing, but the Coast Guard didn't find any fishing equipment. When Laxo threatens to arrest him, the man confesses that he took Hans to the island, and the boat broke down on its way back. He also tells them about the mysterious boxes. At the same time, Hans realizes someone has been snooping in his room. On the island shore, Arno finds Sebastian and tells him that the fire and Carrie's disappearance may be connected. He even admits that Hans may be behind them. Sebastian thinks they should interrogate him. Meanwhile Maria is trying to build a vessel with plastic and wood. Anton tries to talk to her but he sees Paul spying on him, so he decides not to say anything. In the graveyard, Sarah finally tells her daughter that her dad is gone, so they hold a symbolic funeral. When Maria walks by, she notices that Henri is holding a funeral for Magda too. She calls him insane and refuses to accept that her daughter is dead. Afterward Maria tries to leave on her plastic vessel, but no matter how many times she tries, it doesn't work. On the ship, Virta shows Laxo the information they've received from the mainland. Hans has been visiting the archipelago a lot in recent years and bought big plots of land on the islands surrounding Udo. He lived in Russia for a while and was investigated for arms deals. Laxo calls his superior officer to inform him of this and convinces him to give her access to the quarantined rooms. In the evening, Arno and Sebastian surround Hans and quickly bring him down. They tie him to a chair and start interrogating him, but Hans swears he knows nothing. A furious Sebastian ends up punching him. At that moment Sandra comes looking for her father, so they cover Hans' mouth with tape before they go out to help Sandra with the wood. When the men come back, Hans has escaped. In the bunker, Anton tells Paul that he knows he's working with Hans and asks him to stop building the bomb. Paul snaps and grabs him by the neck, telling him he has no power here. The next morning, Maria goes to the graveyard and finally cries for Magda. On the Navy ship, Laxo enters the quarantine rooms where they're keeping the victims of the shipwrecks. The only one healthy is Magda, who is still drawing spirals. Laxo asks the ferry captain what happened, so he tells her they were sailing well until the strange noise made the ferry shake and it got caught in a vortex. Everyone jumped on a lifeboat to escape. The man keeps coughing up blood but he still manages to tell Laxo that Magda wasn't affected by the noise. Then Laxo looks at Magda's drawings and asks her a few questions, but the girl knows nothing. Laxo notices that her necklace has a spiral that looks familiar, so she checks her book and finds an illustration that looks the same next to the legend of the mouth. Meanwhile an islander is guarding the water distiller. Someone suddenly approaches him from behind and kills him, then he destroys all the equipment. A few hours later, Sandra finds the body and calls her father. Arno and Sebastian assume Hans did it but Arno refuses to tell the islanders. Sandra and Carrie's mother Tina overhear them anyway. While Hans sneaks around the island, all the locals gather at the hotel. Pertu blames Sebastian for the murder and Arno defends him, saying they were together last night. Pertu doesn't believe him and begins arguing with Sebastian, ready to start a fight. Sandra stops them before they throw the first punch. On the ship, Laxo checks on Magda again. The girl asks her to send her necklace to the island in a bottle so her mother won't worry. Loxo asks her where she got the necklace, and Magda says it was a gift from a friend who wants to stay secret. This friend isn't male or female, it's in the sea and in her dreams. In the evening, Hans breaks into Seppo's house to steal some food. When he looks in the bedroom, he discovers that Seppo and his wife have self-deleted with a gun. On the shore, Tina finds Carrie's dead body and has a breakdown. Later at the hotel, Tina accuses Sebastian of killing Carrie. Pertu agrees and his friends try to capture the boy, so Arno stops them by finally telling everyone about Hans. The locals immediately go out to start searching the island. At Seppo's house, Pertu and his friends find the bodies in the bed and see Hans escaping through the window. A chase ensues and the men quickly surround Hans to bring him down. Then they start taking turns to repeatedly punch and kick him. In Hans' room, Sebastian is trying to translate the Russian notes but doesn't find anything good, so he asks Arno for tools to open the other box. They find a model of the Cape with buildings that don't exist yet, and the hotel is gone. Arno realizes that Hans' secret plan was to tear down the hotel and build luxury holiday homes. He's a con artist, but he doesn't appear to be involved in the incidents. At that moment the men return to the hotel with Hans. Arno tries to tell them that he was wrong, but Hans pulls out Seppo's gun to try to free himself. The men jump on him to stop him, and in the struggle, the gun accidentally shoots Arno before it falls on the floor. Sandra picks it up and shoots Hans in the face, killing him. In the bunker, Paul has tied his brother up and continues to work on the bomb. On the Navy ship, Loxo tries to talk to Magda again and mentions the mouth. At that moment the ferry captain starts convulsing and throws up blood until he dies. Then one of the guards also pukes blood and collapses. Other victims are beginning to leave their beds, so Loxo has to leave the room. Later on the island, Maria searches for Sarah and they share a hug. At that moment Sarah's daughter finds a bottle on the shore and they open it to reveal Magda's necklace. Maria immediately recognizes it and takes it to Henri, saying that all the strange incidents happened when Magda left the island for the first time. Mary has never left the island and Maria thinks that when she saw her almost drown Magda a year ago, she was actually doing some kind of ritual. When Maria starts talking about the mouth being real, Henri tells her that grief is making her imagine things. In the graveyard, Maria discovers that most graves have the spiral carved on their stones. On her way back to town, she's shocked to find all the bags with the recent bodies. She opens one and is devastated to see Arno. Then Maria goes to Anton's house to look for him. On a table, he finds medicine and a picture of Paul with young Anton. In the bunker, Anton hears her and is desperate to save her from Paul. After some struggle, he realizes that the ropes are actually loose. Soon Paul appears behind Maria and tries to capture her. Maria fights back but Paul overpowers her and starts choking her. When Maria begs using Anton's name, Paul stops, revealing that he's actually Anton's other personality and they're the same person. Memories flood Anton's mind as he realizes he killed Carrie and the distiller guard, making him freeze. Maria grabs a random object and hits him in the head to escape. Then Paul hits Anton to make him fall. This is a manifestation of his own guilt because Anton abandoned Paul in the sinking Estonia to save himself, so now his brother is part of his psychosis. Maria looks back as she runs and sees Anton interacting with the air as if someone was there. Paul repeatedly smashes Anton's head on the ground before leaving. Maria runs to Henri to tell him there are multiple dead people and Magda is out there, but he just thinks she's hysterical. When Paul sneaks around town, Anton tries to take control of the body and both personalities start fighting. Anton manages to overpower Paul and holds him underwater until he drowns. This means it's Anton who is now dead and floating. Sarah sees him and ignores him. On the Navy ship, Virta overhears Loxo talking to her superior, mentioning the Operation East Wind. Virta demands an explanation and Loxo says the operation will eliminate all threats on the island. A furious Virta says there could be people on the island, but Loxo points out that they haven't seen signs of life in weeks. Afterward Loxo and other officers remove the ferry captain's body. Suddenly the infected officer pukes blood on a guard, so now he must be quarantined too. While everyone is distracted, Magda disappears. The girl manages to hide on the ship while the crew looks for her. Sometime later Maria tries to leave the island on her plastic raft again. This time Henri joins her and they manage to sail away together. At the same time, Mary whimpers in bed. Eventually Maria and Henri find a huge cloud blocking the area and they start hearing the painful noise, which also makes the island shake. Maria is bleeding but still keeps rowing, and holds Henri's hand as the cloud surrounds them. Meanwhile Loxo finds Magda on top of the ship. When she tries to bring her down, Magda sees the raft and yells for her parents. The couple sees her and yells back. The soldiers rush to get their weapons but Loxo calms them down and sends out a rescue boat. Moments later Magda finally reunites with her parents. They tell Loxo everything that happened and Maria admits there's no scientific explanation. She thinks Magda is the key to everything. Then Loxo gets a call from her superior and she tells him that there are survivors on the island, but he tells her to proceed with the operation anyway and hangs up. Henri and Maria overhear them and start freaking out. Maria thinks that Magda must return to the island to solve everything and the ship will be safe as long as she's aboard. After lots of thinking, Loxo agrees and the ship begins heading to the island. When it passes through the big cloud, the ship starts shaking and some computers are destroyed. Magda runs to the deck and yells stop, causing the shaking to end. Now the ship can sail normally. In the hotel, Pertu accuses his neighbors of eating his dog and tries to steal food, claiming it's to make up for what he lost in the fire. After filling a bag with cans, Pertu and his wife try to leave on a shabby raft. Sebastian tries to stop him, but Pertu grabs him by the neck and threatens to kill him. A terrified Sebastian runs away and returns to the hotel to try to get help. However, Tina points out they're all going to die soon anyway, so the crowd starts taking food too. Afterward, the locals rush to see Pertu, asking him for a spot on his raft. Pertu tells them to make their own raft and starts fighting them. Sandra shoots a bullet in the air to calm everyone down and then points the gun at Pertu, saying he can't leave with the food. Sebastian talks to her gently and manages to take the gun from her. At that moment, Pertu notices that the radars in the military station are working again. Soon power returns to the island and Mary whispers Magda's name. When the Navy ship is about to reach the pier, 2 jets fly above them ready to start the bombing. Loxo contacts them to tell them that the operation has been cancelled, and after a few minutes of tension, the jets fly away. When the ship reaches the island, the crew immediately starts handing out food and water. Virta tells Loxo that they found enough explosives in Anton's bunker to blow up half the island. All the quarantine people start getting better as soon as Magda leaves the ship, confirming she's the link to everything. After throwing the gun in the sea, Sebastian starts burning Hans' papers. Loxo comes to check on Hans' boxes and finds them empty. She asks about the deaths, so Sebastian tells her there was a fight and Sandra shot in self-defense. When Loxo tells him there's going to be an investigation, Sebastian tries to take the blame for Hans' death, but Loxo turns him down. Then Loxo checks on Magda's family. Maria doesn't want her daughter to become a lab rat and asks her to lie to her superiors. Later, Loxo tells her boss that she cancelled her operation because it was wrong, so the man fires her and puts Virta in charge. Now Virta shares the report but doesn't mention Magda. The next morning, Mary apologizes to Maria for lying all this time, explaining that nobody would have believed her. Marnie was her grandmother and she initiated Mary's mother into witchcraft, then Mary's mother passed it to her. Since Mary had a son instead of a daughter, she had to pass the power to Magda. The mouth was born of grief and the fear of being left alone, which is a force that drags you down like a vortex. Maria realizes that this means Magda will never see the world. Meanwhile, Loxon's boss asks the crew for all the ship's recordings and learns about Magda's existence, so he orders them to isolate the island. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.